All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is 10 a.m. So I'm going to say, Committee Member Wilson, will you start us with the flag salute?
Sure. Stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Committee Member Anderson. Farnbach.
Present.
None has an excused absence. Uriarte.
Present.
Wilson.
present.
And Chair, no.
Present. All right, so let's start with our public comments. A total of 30 minutes is provided for members of the public to address the committee members on matters not listed on the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Public comments may be made in person at the meeting by submitting a speaker card to the committee secretary. Speaker cards will be called in the order it was received. All audio and visual use is prohibited. Public comments may also be submitted by email for inclusion into the record. Email comments must be received prior to the item is called for public comments and submitted to Old Town Local Advisory Committee at temeculaca.gov. All public participation is governed by the council policy regarding public participation at meetings adopted by resolution number 2021-54.
We have not received any public comment.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so let's go to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine, and all will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no discussion of these items unless members of the committee request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. A total of 30 minutes is provided for members of the public to address the committee on items that appear on the consent calendar. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Public comments may be made in person at the meeting by submitting a speaker card to the committee secretary. Speaker cards will be called in the order received. All audio and visual use is prohibited. Public comments may also be submitted by email for inclusion into the record. Email comments must be received prior to the time the item is called for public comments and submitted to the Old Town Local Advisory Committee at temeculaca.gov. All public participation is governed by council regarding public participation at meetings adopted by resolution number 2021-54. So the first item is approval of the January 23rd, 2025 minutes.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any noes? Any abstains? All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, so first item, the business? First item of business. So, members of the public may address the committee on business items that appear on the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. Public comments may be made in person at the meeting by submitting a speaker card to the committee secretary. Speaker cards will be called in the order received. All audiovisual use is prohibited. Public comments may also be submitted by email for inclusion into record. Email comments must be received prior to the item is called for public comments and submitted to the Old Town Local Advisory Committee at temeculaca.gov. All public participation is governed by council policy regarding public participation at meetings adopted by resolution number 2021-54. So the first item of business is a modification application and certificate of historical appropriateness for exterior and interior modifications to an existing historic building, which was the First National Bank building, including exterior paint color changes. Scott Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you stated, this is PA 230499 and 230500 of Gaucho Grill. So it is a modification application and certificate of historical appropriateness. Can you put the presentation on the screen?
We have a PowerPoint presentation we're going to try to get up on the screen.
There we go. So it is a modification application and a certificate of historical appropriateness for exterior and interior modifications to an existing historic building, also known as the First National Bank Building, including exterior paint color changes. So on the screen, this shows the location of the building. It's 28645 Old Town Front Street. Again, it is the First National Bank Building, which is designated in the Old Town Specific Plan. This is also the former location of the bank, restaurant, and bar. So this is a historical photo of the First National Bank Building. It was constructed in approximately 1914, and it is on the local historic register for the city of Temecula. So in the specific plan, there are two levels of projects. There's level 1 projects, which do not require the review and recommendation by OTLAC, and there's also level 2 projects, which do require that review and recommendation. So what are the differences between the two projects? Level 1 projects include re-landscaping around existing historical buildings or structures, re-roofing of existing buildings, additions and remodels to non-historic single-family residences, exterior architectural modifications to an existing non-historic building affecting less than 25% of the front or street side exterior facade, and any other project that is minor in scope as determined by the community development director. So these are all examples, again, stuff that would not come before you. So level 2 projects. These include new multifamily residential, commercial, office, and mixed-use projects, exterior architectural modifications to an existing non-historic building when 25% or more of an exterior facade is affected, any substantial exterior alteration to a designated historic building, including paint colors that are important in defining the historic character of the building, and that's the main reason why this project is before you today. Sign programs, and removal or addition of a property on the Temecula Local Historic Register. So a finding of historical appropriateness. The purpose of this finding is for the maintenance, retention, and preservation of the historical building, form, detailing, materials, and architectural features that are important in defining the historic character of the building. So the specific plan requires this finding for any designated historic building that is modified or altered in any way, including alterations or modifications to the exterior or interior of the building. The specific plan also requires this review of the historic appropriateness with a recommendation by the OTLAC before the project can move forward to the Planning Commission. So staff's been working with the applicant since 2023. We've gone through several reviews. This is the first step going to the OTLAC, and the next step would be going to Planning Commission for the ultimate review and then hopefully approval of the project. So what are the modifications that are proposed as part of the Gaucho Grill? So new paint on the exterior of the building includes the facade, doors, and window trim using colors from the Old Town Specific Plan Sherman-Williams Preservation Palette. So in the Old Town Specific Plan, the last 2 pages of that specific plan provide a color palette. So those are the only colors that new buildings or repurposing of buildings are allowed to choose from. A new accessible entrance on the rear of the building, outdoor patio spaces demolished and regraded to meet ADA requirements, a new enclosed trash area, reconditioning of outdoor patio cover and the bar area, and new raised landscape planters along Main Street and Old Town Front Street using plant materials from the Old Town Specific Plan plant list. So again, in the appendices, there's a specific plant list that new projects or refurbished projects can only choose from. So also we have several modifications to the interior of the building. And those include renovation of the existing restrooms, including fixture relocations, finish and fixture upgrades for durability, aesthetic, and accessibility. Reverse door swings to existing restrooms, installing new historically appropriate style doors. Interior finish replacement in the main dining room, flooring replacement, paint application on all walls and ceilings. Replace existing light fixtures with new pendants and wall sconces throughout the first and second floors. Interior finish replacement in the second floor lounge, dining area. Flooring replacement, paint application on all walls and ceilings. Paint on all other interior spaces. Kitchen hood upgrades and kitchen finish upgrades for health department compliance and new operations. And refresh existing outdoor bar area for accessible serving or cleanup due to wear. Staff has had the opportunity to be in the building with the applicant and the architect. It needs a lot of work, we'll just say that. So all this stuff is greatly needed on this project, especially when you get into the second floor space. So it seems like a lot, but it is a lot, but it's greatly needed for this project. So where does all this stuff take place on the site plan? So just to orientate you, you have Old Town Front Street on the top of the page, and then you have Main Street over here on the right side. So the accessible entrance is around on the back side of the building. The regraded outdoor patio area, the enclosed trash area, the reconditioned outdoor patio cover and bar, and then the raised landscape planters. So this is the existing building as you see out there today. Colors are a little on the yellow side with some orange details. And then what is actually being proposed? So this would be the Main Street view. This is the Old Town Front Street view. And then the colors that are being proposed is the main building color is this classical white that is found in these locations. The bands and cornice, as well as the doors and window trim, is this revival stone color that's located in these locations. And then finally, there's this revival green stone, which are the steps and the base of the building. So, and here is a rendering of what the building would look like after construction. So, and with that, staff is requesting that the OTLAC review provide comments and recommend that the modification application and certificate of historical appropriateness be approved by the Planning Commission. That concludes staff's report. I'm here for all of your questions. The applicant and his team, including the architect, is here as well.
Thank you so much, Scott. Appreciate that. Do we have any comments from committee? Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm representing the Temecula Valley Historical Society. I'm very familiar with that building. I know that the stairs inside leading to the second story are extremely steep. Is that going to be addressed? Is there anything proposed for the upper story?
On the second story, there is bar and dining, so it will be accessible for guests, and there's no proposed change in the angle or steepness of the stairs.
So it will not be ADA compliant for the
So
second story?
So you're correct. When you're providing the same facilities on both floors of the building, it does not have to be ADA compliant.
Okay. A couple other comments. The Historical Society has placed 2 separate plaques on the front of the building. May they remain?
Yes.
Okay. Inside the building, there have been some significant paintings placed that are to be returned to the owners if they're not used in the building. Are those still present?
That I will defer to the applicant and the architect.
Okay. Are they here today?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Another comment is the sign that you have shown approved by the city?
It has not been approved yet. It would be, I'm getting to that.
Okay, I don't like it personally. I don't like the angle at which the letters are. Instead of going sideways, bottom to top, I think it would be much more attractive to go top to bottom with correctly placed letters, you know, straight on. So Gaucho Grill going down and having them oriented the other way, and that's a personal preference. As far as the colors, I'm totally okay with that. The building has been many colors in the past. When I came to town, it was about the color that you show now, except it didn't have the trim painted a different color. So that yellow came later, and it's been green, as you probably know, too. But that off-white is very attractive, and I'm not opposed to the darker brown or the green. The planters, that's kind of a new idea, but I suppose it's just taking the place of the rails there, correct?
Correct,
In
it's to
making
provide
a
separation
barrier.
from the public and the diners.
Okay. That's all my comments for now.
And I will note your comment on the sign. We had that same issue come up with the Hilton Garden Inn that's on Jefferson. It was originally proposed where it was more difficult to read, and they changed it so it's from the top to the bottom for Hilton Garden Inn. So that will be noted.
Any other, go ahead.
May I assume that the plant life and the seating and everything is going to be in compliance with the new proposed planters and things that we saw a month or two ago?
It will be.
Perfect. I think this is a fabulous idea. I think it looks great, and I'm fully supportive of it. I just had one question. Is a grease interceptor being required? Grease interceptor.
Yes, there will be one.
Yeah, that's, to this building, that's going to be a major project. Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
You want to turn your speaker on?
Is it on?
I don't know. Is it? Okay, sorry.
Good morning. So there actually is an existing grease interceptor
There
that
is,
serviced
okay.
the existing kitchen, yes.
All right, do you know the size?
I don't off the top of my head, but it's
Okay.
no less than 1,500 gallons.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you.
Before you leave,
Yes.
do you have the answer to the pictures?
I have to say, I don't remember, just from memory, if there are any paintings remaining in the dining room. However, we will take a look and see if they're there, and if they are, and if you perhaps have photos of them or would like to visit yourself to see if they are the paintings in question.
The two that are important, there was I'm going to call it a framed poster of Agnes Freeman, who was the teller in 1930 when the bank was robbed. And it's a photograph of her, I believe, a young picture and an older picture and some text.
Okay.
So that would be significant. Her son is still living. He's about 90 years old, and he's part of Pechanga. The other is a picture of a basket weaver from Pechanga whose name was Juaneta Nejo. And it shows her with some baskets, and she's an older woman at the time. And that's significant, and I think both of those pictures were donated by Roger Honberger, Agnes Freeman's son.
I am certain that the owner, the landlord, would have no problem returning those if they are there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional comments? Go ahead. Oh,
I'm sorry. Just following up on that, the family would prefer that those items stay as part of the decor to remember the historic past of the building if possible, and if they're not kept, then they should be returned to the family.
Understood. And perhaps Mr. Hermosa can speak to that when he comes up and introduces himself.
I just want to know if there's any sort of timeline or estimated date for the work to start, or does it just really depend on when the Planning Commission pushes it through?
So following this, the project is in review still. If there are further comments, they'll be provided to the applicant, and then following that, we would go to Planning Commission, which we were just talking before this, looking possibly the first hearing of April. And then following that, it would be up to the applicant to get their construction drawings in and through that review process. And hopefully Mr. Hermosa has some more information on a potential opening date.
Okay, thank you. My only other comment is I'm excited to have something else on that corner.
thank you. All right. So from here, do we hear from, oh, Scott, do you have something? No. Oh, from here, do we hear from the owners, or do you want us to vote?
You'd have the applicant come up and
Okay.
speak if you have any questions for him, and then we can move on from there.
Do you want to come up and introduce yourself and maybe give us a timeline?
Good morning, committee. My name is Adrian Amosa, and I'm the owner of Gaucho Grill. I'm very excited for this opportunity to come to Old Town. We are ready to move forward as fast as possible. We have been working with this project for a long period of time already. So as soon as we have some green lines from the hearing that is coming soon in April, We will have all plans submitted as fast as possible, and all the team is ready for starting the renovation as soon as everything is approved.
Thank you. Does anybody have a question?
So do you own just the restaurant business, or do you actually own the land and the building?
No, just a restaurant business.
Right,
It's a-
so the
it's a
owner
lease.
is in Canada still, right?
I'm not sure around his location.
Okay.
Great, I think we're good. Thank you so much. It was a
Thank you
pleasure
so
to
much.
meet you.
Very nice to meet you as well. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Well, let me just add one more thing. Adrian and his team own several Gaucho grills, mostly up in the Los Angeles area. Staff actually took a stealth mission to one of his restaurants just to check it out and make sure it was like legitimate restaurant. So I think once constructed, you all will be very impressed with the quality of the interior and the food.
Thank you. Well, now you're making me hungry, and I have to make a road trip to LA. Thank you. All right, so I think right now I'm going to ask my committee to vote or to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve to move this to the Planning Commission.
I'll second the motion.
And I have another question before we complete our things.
Oh, okay.
My question is, what is the involvement of the owner of the property and the building versus the tenant? How does that work?
We've been in several meetings with the owner. He's been very active to make sure that the project has been moving forward. He does occasional check-ins to ensure that. As you know, there's another aspect of this project, which is the conditional use permit for the alcohol. That's a permit that does not come to OTLAC, so that's why it was not originally brought up. So when you approve a conditional use permit, it runs with the land. So it's essentially the owner's conditional use permit. The applicant uses it, but it is the owner's actual permit. So that's why he's been more involved than some owners are.
Thank you. All right, so continuing on.
I know there's a motion and a second, but I just want to clarify, we do
Yes.
have a speaker slip from a Mark Cusack, but we don't know which item this person wants to speak on. Is Mark here?
Mark, what,
The road closures? Okay, thank you.
all right, so we have a motion and a second, and do we, all in favor? Yes.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
any noes? Any abstains? All right, thank you. Motion carries. So let's go to item number 3, discussion of Old Town events and road closures.
So just to set this item up, the city council is going through the process of evaluating the Old Town events and the various road closures. So there's a presentation that's being given by Tracy Tomines from Community Services, and we have the Director of Community Services, Erica Russo, here as well. So you'll receive a brief presentation. We're looking to get your feedback so that that can be then given to the city council to help inform their decision. So with that, Erica, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add before Tracy presents?
Yeah, I'll just provide a couple minutes of context, and then Tracy and Mike can take it from there. But essentially, as you all know, the city of Temecula hosts a number of events in Old Town Temecula. The council did make changes a couple of years ago to reduce or actually eliminate any privately held events that could be permitted here. So now all events that are held in Old Town in front of City Hall are city events. There are no more privately sponsored events. Those events, as a matter of public safety, require certain road closures. Most of those road closures will be here on Mercedes right in front of City Hall. There are some exceptions for an event like Rod Run, which has some other kind of a different layout. Tracy is going to provide a report kind of overviewing for you all of the events that we have here in Old Town that require road closure throughout the calendar year. In addition, staff has proposed a few modifications that would reduce some of those road closures. And then following getting your feedback on this, staff is going to be taking this report together with the feedback from OTLAC, the feedback from the Community Services Commission, and that entire set of feedback and report and staff recommendations will be brought back before council in April. So, or I'm sorry, March 11th. So given that, I'll hand it over.
I'll actually start this off. Good morning, Chair Nell and fellow committee members. I'm Community Services Manager Mike Wooten, and you already know Tracy Tomina is the Special Events Supervisor. So we've been asked to review all of our Old Town events to determine where we can modify anything to hopefully limit the number of annual road closures on Mercedes Street. So the purpose of this presentation is to update the committee with the information on these events and their corresponding road closures. And at the end, we'll be asking for any recommendations that this committee might have that we can bring before our council on March 11th. So before Tracy begins the presentation, just thought it was important to point out that all of our events are coordinated with multiple departments, which includes Public Works, Emergency Management, Fire, Community Development, RSO. And these include pre and post event meetings where we discuss safety concerns, logistics, traffic control plans, command post placements, staff responsibilities, et cetera. And I say all this just so you understand that event decisions are a result of interdepartmental collaboration along with guidance from our council. So with that, I'll hand it over to Tracy to take it from here.
Good morning. So we'll start off with the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so this first slide shows a list of our current events that take place in Old Town and the current closures associated with it. So pretty much all of these include a closure on Mercedes Street with the 4th of July Parade and Santa Parade. We also close Front Street and the side streets. I do have Rod Run listed, so with this one, we close only the only Old Town Front Street and the side streets. Mercedes does remain open throughout the weekend, so that's why I have a little asterisk there. So with all of these events, the total days of road closures on Mercedes Street is 78. And as I go through the slides, I'll go event by event, provide a brief background if there are some smaller events you may not be familiar with, and then the duration of the road closure for each. And then as Erica and Mike had mentioned, we do have some staff recommendations. And then at the end, we'll kind of review what that number would look like based on recommendations. So starting with the spring, we host a Community Services Expo in April. This is an opportunity to showcase our department, all of our divisions, facilities, and contract class programs. With this one, it is a one-day event on a Saturday. We close Mercedes Street and the Main Street Y that Friday prior due to the setup of canopies. So we have a few events that I'll kind of go through during our presentation. If there's any events that take place on a Saturday but require a Friday road closure for setup, once those canopies are set up, we could temporarily reopen Mercedes Street that Friday evening because most of our canopies would be in the horseshoe. So if we left Mercedes Street open that Friday night and still had the Y closed temporarily, that would allow for some more traffic, and then we would close it that Saturday morning prior to the event and then reopen it. So with an event like Expo, we would reopen the roads by 4 p.m. And then the Rod Run, as I mentioned, this is a 2-day event, so we do the Friday night cruise and Saturday show and shine. So with both of those, as I had mentioned, Mercedes Street typically remains open for through traffic, whether it's spectators or those who are just coming to Old Town for a regular Friday or Saturday night. So with that, we have the closure on Friday from about 4 to 8:30 p.m. and then Saturday 4:30 a.m. until 5 p.m. Then with Culture Fest, this is another one-day event. All of the participants bring their own canopies for this, so it's just a one-day closure of Mercedes Street. The event goes until 3 p.m., so we say the road is closed until about 6 p.m., but sometimes if our vendors clean up quicker, as soon as that last canopy and all the vehicles are out, we promptly reopen the road. So 6 p.m. is just to give a couple-hour buffer for those participants. Heading into the summer, last summer was the first year that we officially relocated all of our summer concert series from the CRC Amphitheater to the Civic Center Quad. Part of this, as Mike had mentioned, it was a lot of coordination with Fire and with RSO. The amphitheater had been a very popular location for over 20 years, but as part of that, we were running out of space and it wasn't safe to accommodate all those spectators in the amphitheater. So we did relocate it to the Civic Center Quad, and then this year we are planning to only host a summer concert in conjunction with the Sunset Market, so it won't require separate road closures. And then with the Juneteenth celebration, this is an event that we've, over the years, been trying to find the perfect home for it. So we had originally hosted at the Civic Center in conjunction as a concert and a vendor fair. Then we hosted it one year at the CRC Amphitheater strictly as a concert. So this year, we're looking to go back to a concert. With this, we do have plans for this year, hosting it in between the summer concert series, so we're hoping for a boost in attendance. We have been discussing ideas for either relocating it this year based on committee and council feedback, or sticking in the same location for this year and relocating for 2026. Additionally, with the summer, we host the 4th of July parade in the morning. So the parade kicks off at 10 a.m. sharp. So with that, we have kind of staggered road closures. We close Old Town Front Street first thing in the morning to allow for all of our parade participants to come into the staging area. And then once it's time getting close for the parade to actually start, then we do close off Mercedes Street temporarily, just because due to the staging and destaging, it can be tricky to get in and out. And then after the 4th of July parade is over, then we quickly head over to the sports park for all of our other festivities. National Night Out is a newer one that we've been partnering with RSO on, and this year we are looking into relocating it. Some options had been either relocating it to a community park, that way it's closer to the neighborhoods, but we've also been talking to the Promenade Mall, and they're definitely open to hosting it this year and in the future. In the fall, we host our National Preparedness Fair. This is another typical just one-day road closure, but this year staff is planning to combine with our health fair, which will be listed on my next slide. With Cartoonapalooza Art Festival, this is another one of those events. It's, over the years, it used to be a 3-day event. It was Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and over time we've condensed it to just a Saturday, all-day festival. And this is another one of those events where we would have canopies set up that Friday prior, but once those canopies are set up and our supply vendor, his truck is out of the way, we could open up Mercedes Street that evening, then close it again Saturday morning before our participants start to arrive. And as I mentioned, the Health and Community Resource Fair, so we are looking to combine it and host the Preparedness and Health Fair, and then with this setup, we would be providing canopies for any of our participants. So same thing, we do the setup on Friday, temporarily reopen Mercedes Street to let traffic through that Friday evening, and then close again on Saturday. And then the Halloween Carnival, this is definitely one that's gotten way more popular over the years. Before I even started, it used to be held at the hockey rink, and then it was held at the skate park parking lot, moved it to the CRC parking lot, and post-COVID, we realized we totally outgrew that area, and we found our new home here at the Civic Center Quad. And then this is a one-day road closure, and the event ends at 8:30, so again, as soon as all of our games are packed up, canopies are picked up, we open that road. Then we have our Patriotic Salute to Veterans. So this is traditionally a symphony concert in front of City Hall. We used to do a similar event for Memorial Day, and last year we had relocated that one to the Old Town Temecula Community Theater for the symphony concert. So this is an event we could relocate for this year, whether it's relocating a symphony concert to the Old Town Community Theater, or, you know, completely refreshing the event and just hosting it at any one of our city parks. Puesca Mountain Day, this is an event that the city manager's office coordinates each year, so I don't have the exact closure time for this. Typically, it's a half-day closure. If the event takes place at 4 or 5 p.m., the road might be closed at about 1 and then open up promptly after the event, so maybe 6 or 7. So this year, with it being on a Saturday, I don't have the exact times, but rest assured it would just be a one-day closure. Heading into the winter, everyone knows our Santa's Electric Light Parade. So with this one, as you're aware, the parade itself kicks off at 7 p.m. at the intersection of Jefferson Avenue and Del Rio Road. So due to that, with the parade route, with our staging and destaging area, Old Town Front Street, we start closing at 6 p.m. And then once the parade starts, then Mercedes Street is essentially closed at 7. That way, once the parade starts making its way down, no one can really get in or out of Old Town. With the New Year's Eve grape drop, this event, it only requires a one-day road closure. Historically, it's been already closed due to the ice skating rink, but if we didn't have the ice skating rink, it would still just be a one-day closure for that event, which brings me to Temecula on Ice. With the setup, breakdown, and actual duration of the ice rink operating, it's about a 5-week closure. So it starts in December is when they start prepping for it, and then it's open typically about 3.5 weeks around Christmas vacation, and then it remains open through the first week of January. And then lastly, we have our year-round event, which is the Temecula Sunset Market. So this event, as you may know, it is held on the second and fourth Thursday of the month. This year, it's planning to run from March through November. Our agreement with the contractor is approved through June 2026. With our agreement, we are able to make any sort of changes. And since I'm kind of giving this presentation, I won't be doing my typical monthly report, so I'll just say that with the market, it returns next month. So we, at council this week, we were approved to close the road for those March dates, which would be March 13th and March 26th, I believe. And then, so with this slide, I know it's a lot to take in. So this slide, as I mentioned, the first column shows our current closures. The second column would be either consolidating, so by opening up Mercedes Street that Friday evening, that would be a day-and-a-half road closure versus 2, with some of our events potentially relocating or combining. That brings us down to 67.5 days of road closures. The third column shows those recommendations, plus if we were to remove the ice skating rink, that would bring us down to 29.5 days of road closures. And as I mentioned, it doesn't include Rod Run into the count, since this is, our focus is primarily for those that are closing Mercedes Street and then impacting the traffic throughout. And then I'm happy to go back to that slide if you need it as a visual. Otherwise, we're open to discussion at this time.
Thank you. Very thorough, and you answered my one, I had others, but that question was, what does it look like now? Okay, let's start with, do you want to start this way? Go ahead.
All right, so my big question is, it looks like Rod Run gets about twice as many people as we get for the Santa Parade. I know for the parade, we get parking passes for residents. Is there any way we can set up parking passes for residents or parking further away and some sort of shuttle system for residents and employees? I literally pay to stay somewhere else on Rod Run weekend
Okay.
because it is so awful trying to get home.
Yes, we do have, we have been discussing alternative parking lots to use for resident parking, and we do have, as we mentioned, one of those internal staff meetings next week to discuss plans for Rod Run. So resident parking is one of those that we'll address. And then as soon as we have that, we'll either share that recommendation with OTLAC specifically, but then as well as our merchants and residents so that they're aware of what those options are.
Okay, thank you. And then even for employees, I mean, the first year I worked down here, I had people leaving their houses 2 hours early to get to work.
Yes, I know. That's definitely a tricky one because, as you know, we have so many businesses in Old Town, so we'll try our best to see what accommodations we can for that. But due to, like, with the residents, we definitely want to ensure they have access to their home, but definitely the merchant parking, that's something we'll also look into.
All right, thank you so much, guys.
So I just have one comment, and that is that the patriotic concert on November 11th, it's so nice when it's outdoors. So it doesn't have to be at City Hall, but if it's outdoors. I've attended many of them, and the one that was at the theater just didn't have the same feeling as that Americana thing, you know.
We
of
do hear
having
that a lot,
outdoor
specifically
concert.
about Veterans Day, that hometown feel. So yeah, we'll take that into consideration.
On that topic, I believe there may also be a subcommittee level discussion about potentially reimagining the Veterans Day celebration so that it's not in the evening either, because the one other piece of feedback we've gotten about the concert in the evening is that it's chilly, and so the weather can be unpredictable in November, and so we are kind of looking at that event as a whole and whether that can be reconfigured. But thank you for your feedback, Rebecca.
Thank you. Scott?
So my question is, and I love the events. I think the events really help define Temecula. We all know that the parking's a problem, street closure's a problem. Right now, we're closing the street we're closing Mercedes from street to street. Now that we have those metal barriers, is it possible to, and the reason I'm saying that is because it opens up those 2 new parking lots on both sides. Now, for instance, the ice rink uses part of the street to set up some vendor booths, but the parking lot on this side has an outdoor entrance exit that people could still use. but we cut off that road all the way down to Second Street. If we just use those metal barriers, that would open up those two parking lots again, which is desperately needed and wouldn't be as hard. I mean, I know that, you know, when they close it for so long for the ice rink, and, you know, obviously safety is of the utmost importance, but I think that still kind of corrals that area and gives us two parking lots back.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'll kind of share my perspective, and then we have the Director of Public Works if he wants to clarify anything. So with the way they have redone the parking lots, it does allow access through the 3rd Street alley for that south parking lot, which has definitely been an issue, even for staff. When we kind of look at it during an event, there's no way to access it. So with that, we are able to utilize that, and then that way our road closures, when we close Mercedes Street, it's primarily closing from the City Hall access road to the 3rd Street alley. That way both lots are accessible. There are times, depending on the number of vendors we're anticipating for the event, we do kind of try to guarantee parking spaces for them. During the time of the ice skating rink, since construction was still kind of going on, we weren't able to get to that point, but moving forward, like with our first event that we'll be hosting, we will be able to leave that south lot accessible. We did try and discuss with Public Works if there was a way to get from one lot to the other during a road closure. Unfortunately, there's not a safe way once you get to just below the fountain. But definitely it will allow for more parking, and then we would just, during an event, block off the entrances on the horseshoe side. That way, if canopies are set up, people could still pull into the parking lot from the 3rd Street alley.
I'll just jump in for a second and mention that we also have Lieutenant Vic Pearson here, who heads the team that does all of our event safety planning. So if we do have any questions from a public safety perspective, I'm sure he'd be happy to jump in.
Go ahead, Colonel.
I own a couple of apartment buildings here in Old Town, and so I do consult with my tenants, and it's so interesting that about half of them say, we love it, don't change a thing, and the other half says, oh my God, I had to park at Chili's and walk home with groceries, and I wasn't prepared for the cold weather. I think the main feedback from my tenants was just the number of the closures. And the added inconvenience. And when you look at 78 days out of a year of people having to find out how to get home, that's a huge interference with a term they use in real estate of quiet enjoyment. Another one of my concerns that recently popped up was evacuations. With the ice rink, everybody loves it, it's beautiful, but how do you get around? When everything is closed off, you can't get in or out because that access point is closed off. And then, of course, comes the Palisades fire. How will we evacuate people, including the 1,700 odd homes that are going to be put on the hill, should there be a fire? That, to me, we need to keep that the foremost safety in our mind is our residents and our businesses and our tourists come a time of disaster. How are we going to handle that? So a backup plan for circulation might be wise for fire to address, and then just to keep the overall convenience to businesses and residents in mind. Thanks.
Yes,
You're
definitely.
doing a great job. You really are.
Thank you. And yeah, definitely in terms of evacuation, that is definitely something we discuss when we work with fire and with our emergency manager, but we'll definitely take that in consideration.
Right. Thanks so much.
Can we take I should have done public comments.
Is there any more discussion amongst the committee members?
I think the only thing I had was, I don't think that we want, speaking from the merchants and services and restaurants, we definitely don't want to take everything away, so we love that you're compromising and looking at that. Taking away the Temecula on ice would just, I think it would be impactful and I don't think that would be something that we'd want to do, so maybe reconfiguring how we can just do parts of it is great. I was just thinking, I love the consolidation and the move. No, I think that's it. I apologize. I was thinking, and you guys were talking, I was thinking what you were saying, so I think I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. I think before we hear from the public, I'd like to ask just a couple of questions to make sure we're giving good information to the city council. The first thing I'd like to hear from the committee members individually is just what are your thoughts on 78 closures per year? So if you could just speak to that.
Could we go back to the slide with the list of closures, please?
I was just
I
gonna
think that would
ask-
be helpful.
That would be helpful, yes. Scott, go ahead, Scott.
To me, it doesn't seem so bad when you look at 38 of those 78 is the ice rink. And I think if we made the ice rink so both of those two parking lots are open, it's not as big an issue. I love having the events. I think the big question here is kind of the compromise of what parts of the street we close. So it's not closed from end to end of Mercedes, and it's really just kind of right in front of City Hall.
So 78 is a lot. I do appreciate wanting to consolidate them, maybe, you know, slow down the road closures a little bit. Again, my thing is always, it's a lot. People who live down here, work down here. It's not great that I have to plan my vacations and take time off of work on weekends when we have road closures, because I know I won't be able to go home. So again, that's just my biggest thing. Residents, employees, it's a lot.
I'm really empathetic to those people who come to Old Town for their livelihood and for their apartments. It doesn't impact me that much, and so I tend to agree with what Scott said about limiting the amount of the street that is closed off. But if, you know, if there can be something done like parking passes for those residents and business people, I think that'd be good.
Would you mind if I just asked a clarifying question? And for the residents, the accommodations that are made for the two parades, do you find that that's a workable solution? Because I know you mentioned earlier hoping to get something similar for Rod Run.
It usually is pretty workable. The only downside is a lot of the units, at least for us, are double occupancy. So we get one parking pass. So between my husband and I, one of us takes the day off of work and stays in Old Town so we know we have a spot. And then the other one gets the pass spot when we get home.
Got it. That's valuable feedback. Thank you.
Carlene, did you?
No, I'm fine, thank
Okay.
you.
I think my only thing is on 78 closures, it is a lot when you look at the numbers because it's almost 2.5 months. But when you look at it in the perspective of, like Scott said, 38 days and 18 days, it feels better than it did. I still like the idea of consolidating some of it because we still need to make sure. But then I know that there's also a personal responsibility for the owners of the businesses to tell their employees that they do need to park, not here, but maybe figure out how to do it ahead of time. And we know these closures happen, but maybe we all need to get together and figure out how to get this parking for our employees under control. So that I think is something that we all need to talk about too, as even the Old Town Association.
One more comment in that the consolidation of the events means there are then parking spaces that are going to be used by others for 2 events in one day, leaving even fewer for the residents and the businesses.
I will say the events planning to be consolidated tend to be the lower attendance events.
Okay.
Yeah, like 200 or 300. Yeah,
Okay.
that won't be I don't think that's as big of an
Yeah,
impact.
it's not like consolidating a parade and a Rod Run. That would just be
Yeah,
like
no.
apocalyptic for
Yeah.
parking.
And 2 very different crowds, so it's like 100,000 people in town.
Right.
Yeah, and then I think my only other thing is re-looking at the surface structures and the parking structures and allowing for those to be used 24 hours when these events happen so that you now allow for more parking for residents, things like that. So I don't know. I don't know if those are just some of our thoughts on it.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Did that
I
answer
think
your
you could-
question?
Yeah, I think you could do the public comments now.
Yes, all right. So let's go ahead with the public comments, please.
We have 3 requests to speak. First will be Ricky Lay, followed by Mark Kizek.
Hello, oh crap, it's loud. I'm Ricky from 1909. I'll go a little off before I start on the road closures, but from our point of view, parking quantity, I don't believe is an issue in Old Town. I refuse to believe that's a problem. I think it's the quality of the parking spots, and that a lot of residents and mainly employees, I would say, they're taking up the quality parking spots, which I know is something that the city is working on, and I think it makes sense. In regards to events, we are very much pro-event. I am a fan of events. I hope all of them could stay in Old Town. I think the way that they're executed is great. The kind of events we do is great. I couldn't be more happy and supportive of the events that we do. I mean, really all of them. So now it just really gets into road closures, which I would say, from our perspective, it is probably the top issue, and we see it. Luckily, we see it and experience it and hear about it all the time. At the restaurant, but even outside of the restaurant, we hear about it. From my perspective, it seems like it's either we close the roads or we don't do the events. And I don't see why it has to be so black and white. There doesn't seem to be much entertaining of other solutions. Now, mind you, there are, of course, some events, the closure just has to happen. The Halloween Carnival, I can't imagine you could ever do that and keep all those kids safe. I take my kids every year. It makes sense. It has to. If you want to do it here, it requires a road closure. And I couldn't, and I agree with that totally. But many of the other events, even the ice skating rink, if you're bringing in, let's say, 500 people per day, and that, again, that's over the course of many, many hours of service. It's not like 500 kids are all showing up at the same time, like the carnival. Entertaining other ways to keep the road completely open. I heard, so the reason I was told that it has to be closed is because the street is made of pavers there, and it's confusing to, and it could be confusing to kids potentially, and that makes sense. Then why not pave it? It's such a small piece of property, it could not cost much to pave it. There's just no way. And even in addition, maybe temporary speed bumps that go up for those kind of events, temporary stop signs. I think there's actually probably a lot of things that can be discussed, but it just seems like it's just, well, if we can't shut it down, then we just won't do it. And I just disagree. In general, I disagree. Not on all the events, but and I've been told the past few, or given the impression, like, if my view is that I don't, then I don't support safety, which is nonsense. But by that standpoint, it's every event that Temecula ever does is always some sort of a safety concern, and it is. But how can we do these, minimize safety? It's not going to bring it to zero safety concern. And no events do. And that, what tells me that it's possible is the farmer's market. We do the farmer's market every week, and there's no road closure, and it's high traffic, and there's a lot of kids. So I think kind of looking at it, each one separately, I think it's necessary, rather than just throw all these events away. In regards to the road closures, there's no doubt in my mind that continuing to do all these, it's permanent long-term damage to Old Town. I know for a fact because of what we hear, especially with locals. The tourists, they don't know any different, and they're gonna come here anyway, and then they're gonna find out that it's bad and they may never come here again. But locals, they know, so they just don't come here. They just, even whether there's an event, a road closure or not, they just say, I don't go there anymore. And it's not because of parking, it's because the traffic is so bad that it's like, it's not even worth the hassle. Oh, I ran out of time. All right, I'll save the rest for next time.
Thank you.
All right.
The
Thank you.
next speaker is Mark Kuzak, followed by Patrick Schneider.
Hello. With looking at the amount of events that we have, I can guarantee that 70 of those events are on weekends, which it directly impacts the restaurant that I run. And I give employees rights to work and things like that because it doesn't, there's no place to park. And also, the city has never once come up to me in the 10 years we've been open and said, why don't you guys do something in front for the event and showcase your food. You guys bring in trucks, and I guarantee that the vendors that come in are not going to move their canopies back and forth just so traffic can go through. It's just not, it's something that's going to be overlooked. And I'd rather showcase my food than have kettle corn and different things like that. We just, let me see. That's been addressed, and I like yours, where I don't understand why the entire road has to be shut down. It just seems like a complete waste. And aside from being no parking, nobody comes up to the garage anyway on weekends like that. So I think it has to be reworked to where we have to realize that it's everything that happens here is on weekends. There's nothing going on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night in Old Town. So the 78 events, 70 of them are weekends, which directly affects us because we don't get any foot traffic from the events that are put on. They tend to stay up by the horseshoe and get in the parking garage and leave. And I'd like to keep people down here, and with all the restaurants that are closing anyway, find a way to keep the public down here supporting us and just have maybe canopies set up where in front of your restaurant where you do like basic small foods and things like that. And with the parking structure, with the tenants, I don't know how to say this. There's no, I don't get a parking spot. I can't get to my parking spot unless I get down here and park my car at 7 in the morning and then ride my bike back, things like that. And it's just something has to be done about the 200 plus employees that are here on a Saturday night working the restaurants and the tenants that the Front Street Plaza where I'm located, these ladies have kids and it's not fair to them to have to lug groceries 6 blocks away for the benefit of something that we don't get anything out of, it seems. So that's all I wanted to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our
Thank
next
you.
speaker is Patrick Schneider.
Good
Morning, committee. Thanks for holding this. This is an important topic. So we have two businesses in Old Town, one on Front Street and one on Mercedes, Temecula Lavender Company and Corbo Wine and Tea. So we see the whole impact of the ecosystem when you close Mercedes. Two things happen, and it's already been addressed. If we can get those parking spots that flank the fountain open, they've been beautifully paved. So one of the things that happens is that parking is impinged, right? And so getting those open is really, really important. The other thing is it puts an enormous amount of pressure on Front Street to close down, right? So these are the two main impacts that we see. There's been times, there was one Saturday that was, there was a closure, and we were under construction with the parking structure that's by Bailey's. And remember, on Saturdays, there's a lot of parking that is not, utilized because of the fair or the outdoor markets. And so parking is an issue. And in fact, there was one Saturday where we lost 5 reservations because people couldn't find a parking. And we're right across from the parking structure, but they couldn't get in and they couldn't find parking. So there's definitely an issue with this, and I think the committee is addressing a lot of it. What I'm hearing is really, really good, and I think we can focus on, the other thing is we don't complain, we lean into these things, right? And so we set up a booth at the ice rink. We were the only local restaurant that had a booth at the ice rink 2 years ago, and I'm surprised at 12,000 people are there. If you really look at it, especially during the week, it's dead. I mean, there's really not that much going on. So to have the ice rink there, I mean, I'm actually a fan of events and those types of things, but if we can not close down Mercedes during the week during the ice rink, I think that would be helpful as well. So I really applaud what you guys are doing and really bringing this to the forefront. I love the idea of this consolidation and really, utilizing the sports park for some of these things. We had the Greek festival, that was a real issue, and that was moved out. And so I think there's a lot of attention going here, but remember there is an impact when we close this down, and let's get focused on not closing down Mercedes 78 times. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no further requests to speak.
I guess I did have one question. Do you know if our parking structure is usually full on a Saturday, or is it more of a signage issue? Because that is what a lot of our businesses say, is that there's a signage issue and people don't realize that you can park there, or that it's free, or that it's open, and then there's an awkward sign on the 4th floor or something like that that makes them think they can't park there because it's employees. So that's what I guess I wanted to know.
Sure. So as far as the signage goes, we do have our parking monitors that are at the entrance and show how many spaces available based upon, and that's really just a magnetic type, locator that as, cars go over it, it deducts a number, and as cars come back, the number goes up. So it's not really tracking like you would see other parking structures where they have a puck or something in the spaces. Now, as you, as a committee heard before, the frog parking sensors are being implemented, and they are on a pilot project basis right now on Front Street, and those have been installed from Main Street over to the arches, to the north arches. Now, eventually, if that program goes very well, I don't want to speak for Matt's, shop, but that would be implemented all the way through the parking structure to get a more accurate view of what's happening. But we do at least have that. Now, as for some of the other signage, we have explored, and there is some Old Town wayfinding signage that is being proposed. It's going through the process right now with economic development, with the city manager's office, to be able to point people more to the public parking and for them to realize it is public, because I know that there's confusion because there's some private lots that are owned by businesses where they are charging large fees for people to park. And yet we do have the public spaces, which are at, behind the Roger Epperson Memorial parking lot, behind the Stampede. All of that's reconstructed. We do have the 2 parking lots here in the town square. We also have where the market is at on 6th Street, or excuse me, yeah, 6th. And then we have the parking structure. So that signage is being developed right now, and that'll be implemented. I know that there is that confusing signage within the parking structure that you mentioned, where it mentions employees park here, and it really isn't to restrict parking for the public. It's to encourage the employees to park up there so that they're not obstructing parking below for businesses. But certainly that'll be noted down in this meeting to maybe revisit, to be more clear on that is not meant to restrict parking. It's meant to just encourage the employees to park above. And then lastly, I will say regarding a comment that was made on the 6th Street and the markets and such, the reason that those streets are not closed, during that time is because of the configuration of Mercedes and how it moves around and goes towards Marino, and then you only have the one street, 6th Street, to be able to get out to Front Street. So it makes it very difficult to shut the streets down because that would snarl traffic completely to get through. Now, I know that the counter argument is it's still snarling traffic when we close, let's say, Mercedes from 4th over to 3rd. However, in those instances, there is the finger streets that go out to Front Street, which is the reason that traditionally it was thought we could still do that. And then, as you mentioned, we have the metal bollards that are now in place. Those were recently installed, so I don't believe we've really used those except for on Martin Luther King. We had those up, but we could I know that those bollards, in conjunction with now the parking lots being paved, as Tracy mentioned, and then also having the alleyway free of obstruction, it does give more options. However, all of these will be discussed, by the city council and internally later. But that's just a little bit of historical data on the parking and why we have the signage and things like that.
Thank you, because I think that signage will really help a lot. I think people don't realize that all the free parking is available, but that will help, I think, a lot of the issues that are coming to. Okay, thank you. Did the committee have any other questions or comments? Any other? Okay.
Director Russo, any other final questions?
No, I do feel like that covers ground really well. I do want to emphasize, obviously, as city staff, we're extremely receptive to feedback. We appreciate hearing feedback, and all of these things are evolving. Over the years, all of our events have evolved. They'll continue to evolve. The needs of the public have continued to evolve. The landscape and businesses you see here have evolved over time. So we're very receptive, and we appreciate the feedback. I would just defer to Lieutenant Pearson for a moment and just see if there's anything he wanted to add.
Well, thank you for your feedback. This is not the last conversation. If you think about it, in the not-too-distant future, we're going to have a western bypass that will go up into the hills at Altair. There's going to be a large central park at Altair, so if you stand on the steps of City Hall and look across down Main Street, that will be a public park with the potential for programming, so we'll continue this conversation. But I think we have what we need to provide to the City Council for their next discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. All right, I apologize, I lost where I was. Okay, all right, so thank you, everybody, for your public comments, and now we're moving towards advisory committee reports. Anybody? My advisory committee, or have you said everything? Okay, go ahead.
So my only thing is it possible for us or the city or someone to be more proactive on social media about the parking? If I had a nickel for every Facebook post I saw in the last week screaming about how there's only paid parking in Old Town now.
I know, I saw.
I just don't know if it's possible for us to be more proactive, because
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
We cover,
Go
so,
ahead.
so one of the things we found, obviously, with social media is it's getting really hard to cut through all the chatter in people's feeds. And with the algorithms, even people who follow our accounts, we can't be guaranteed that they're seeing our content. It's very challenging. But yes, we do try to be very proactive. We have two separate Instagram accounts and Facebook accounts. One is the city's main page that kind of covers everything relating to the city, traffic, construction, development, all of it. And then we have a dedicated community services page, which covers all of the events. So we definitely try to share, and we will do more and more pushing out on that. But if there are other like individual groups we can share information to that you feel like would be good disseminators of information, we're very receptive to that, because we know a lot of times in certain groups there are specific people who are kind of like the persons everybody else goes to for information, and we're more than happy to like reach out to those people and make sure that they're getting all the information as well.
I just want to add, the other thing we're investigating is you received the presentation about the parking sensors and the technology from Frog Parking. They do have the ability to link to our app, similar to Google Maps. So if you're looking for a spot, you'll be able to see, this is in the future, this isn't presently, but you'd be able to navigate to Old Town, to any of our public parking lots, and see actually where the spots are open. So that's a future kind of add-on that we'll be investigating. So in addition to addressing social media, I think that app could solve a lot of our issues.
Anything from historical? Okay. I don't have anything from the Old Town Association, except that we're working on a couple of PR campaigns, and that is it right now, but we'll have more to come later. And I was smiling when your post came out about the parking thing, and then all of a sudden, all of it, and I knew, I mean, you can't stop it. No matter how you write your post, you cannot stop the train. It goes. So. I think we're good. So next is the Community Services Department report.
I think Tracy mentioned that the initial presentation was going to cover that section.
All right, then let's move to Public Works.
From Public Works, everything in Old Town, you know, as far as the construction projects are essentially complete. So the parking lots are open, everything is done. We're set up to just kind of monitor drainage and such, but we are working right now with Edison on some Rule 20 undergrounding. So we're going to be looking at utilizing some funds to underground some poles on 3rd Street. So we have that application in. So our goal is little by little over time to continue to underground Old Town to the point where we have everything, you know, all the infrastructure in. So that's it.
Thank you. That'll be an interesting to see that. Community Development Director's report.
Eric Jones has a brief update on the new parking sensors that were installed on Old Town Front Street. So I'll turn it over to Eric.
Thank you. Just need to get the PowerPoint up real quick. Perfect. Well, thank you. Yes, so as you've already heard throughout the course of this meeting, the sensors were installed. They were put in on February 11th, so just not too long ago, for our pilot program. It's 88 spaces, and I've just shown here kind of what they look like. They're the little flush-mounted spaces there, and just a few photos of the installation. And again, we're only gathering data at this point. We're just trying to find out what's going on. We just need the data. And where that pilot program takes place is right here in Old Town, from the northern arch down to Main Street. You can see the little yellow slashes through there. Those are the segments that have sensors in them now. System's been up and running for about a week, and we've been able to start to get some data. So I'm going to show you just 2 brief slides to just kind of show what we've collected so far, but I just want to preface this with, this is just a week that it's been running, and you need at least several weeks to draw any type of statistical analysis from this. So this is just basically to say, they're in, we flipped on the on switch, and they're collecting data. So what are some of the 2 things that we've seen just in this segment here? Well, looking at that segment with those 88 spaces, those 88 spaces serviced well over 4,000 occupancies. So the way you read this graph is along the x-axis down here you have the dates. So we have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the way through till Saturday. And you can see that Saturday was the busiest. And it's kind of remarkable that it's over the course of a week, but for those 88 spaces, you had 4,682 turnovers basically going on in their different parking sessions happening. The next thing we wanted to pull out was how long are people parking there in these spots? So we see that most of these folks is an hour to 2 hours. And the way you read this graph is along here on the x-axis, this first one, this is an hour, and you have 2 hours, 3 hours, and so on and so forth. And you can see we get all the way down towards the end, this is 9 hours, 10 hours. So there's some of that going on, at least for this week. But again, it's just a week, and we need more weeks to get the actual statistical data out of this. But they're installed, they're pulling out data. Frog right now is still working on compiling our reports so they can be much more presentable when we come in. But we wanted to show you this to say, hey, they're in, they're working, and we're working with Frog to fine tune all this and get things moving for us. So really all I had.
Thank you. Do you guys have it? Does my committee have any questions on what they're seeing? If you did the math, it's 53 turnovers per parking lot.
So this is going to be a standing agenda item at all future OTLAC meetings. We're going to make it a business item so we can present the data and then get any feedback from the committee members.
All right, excellent. Thank you. That data is so interesting already, so it'll be really cool to see the trend.
Yeah,
after a
especially as
while.
more time goes by and you can account for weather, you can account for special events, you can just see how that's all playing into this. So.
I can already tell you the 3 cars that are on Front Street all the time, but that's okay.
Well, we can zero in per sensor and yeah. So.
Right? Yeah. I can tell you where they are. So, excellent.
Eric, can you speak to when the second phase is going to go in and when we can
Sure.
monitor all of Old Town?
Yeah, so this is the pilot program, the first phase, and it's going to run for at least 3 months. We want to make sure that this thing is doing what they said it would do, that it's working properly and whatnot. At the end of that 3 months, then we'll start, provided the pilot goes well, we'll start moving forward with phase 2, which is the rest of the public spaces in Old Town, including the structure. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I think we are good. We don't have any other questions. So I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting.